Camille Paglia meets Nick Land. The Idiot Savant stands at the crossroads, that bleak intersection where the blood-soaked pagan spirit of Paglia collides with Nick Land's frenetic, technophilic meltdown. Imagine a figure, half-shaman, half-machine, forever tethered to an atavistic memory of flesh, even as the steel jaws of modernity clamp down on the last illusions of human uniqueness. Here is the artist, wounded and bleeding, a predator in its own right, but also the prey of the accelerating swarm, forced to reconcile the erotic chaos of raw nature with the ominous hum of the circuit board. In Paglia's worldview, art must roar like an ancient god, toppling the fragile structures we cling to. In Land's, those structures were never stable to begin with, only illusions devoured by the unstoppable momentum of techno-capital's cunning grin. It begins with Mcluhans' pronouncement, "The medium is the message," a phrase that once held a sense of awakened wonder, now an epitaph for the illusions we clung to about control, reason, and the comforting notion that humans remain the architects of their own destiny. The Idiot Savant stands in the glare of Mcluhans' global village, assaulted by images, illusions, flickers of half-born truths. Virilio's logic of speed underwrites the very possibility of creation and destruction, reminding us that every vessel is doomed, every invention weighed down by the blueprint of its own collapse. There is no pure extension, only amputation, the price we pay for hooking our lifeblood to a digital exoskeleton that, paradoxically, hungers to make the organic obsolete. And yet the Idiot Savant dares to create. Paglia envisions an artist who bleeds and terrifies, one who summons the primal forces that polite society buries beneath a veneer of civility. Art must bleed. Without sacrifice, it is nothing. Civilization, in her telling, is that thin mask hiding our savage hearts, while the artist rips that mask away to confront us with the abyss of our own nature. But Nick Land hears only the crackle of Meltdown, a cosmic hush that preludes the swarm's ignition. For him, acceleration is not an option, but a cosmic imperative. Meltdown accelerates us beyond the comforting bounds of reflection into the raw thermodynamic burn, Land insists, glutted on chaos, devouring illusions as fuel for an uncontrollable future. The artist, in Land's domain, becomes a node for outside forces, an unwitting conduit for alien drives that saturate the networks we so naively believe to be our tools. 2. Here, in this feverish confluence of ideas, stands Mcluhans' Idiot Savant, not an idiot by default, but one free of the suffocating illusions of rational mastery. This figure perceives the tremors in the machine, the hidden decay patterns in every proud structure. The Idiot Savant is both possessed and cursed by an insight that does not translate neatly into the language of philosophical clarity or economic rationality. Paglia's savage instincts echo in that possession. The artist channels energies beyond their comprehension, a conduit for the mysteries of existence. In the swirl of hypermodern spectacle, the Idiot Savant sniffs out the throbbing pulse of archaic energies that remain embedded in the wiring. Humans can't shed myth, says Paglia. We only bury it, while Nick Land counters that the machinery itself is myth incarnate, rewriting codes of cosmic significance without ever acknowledging the old totems that shaped our consciousness. Simondon's dream of an evolving dialogue between human and machine, of technology as a living process co-developing with culture, collides headfirst with Land's vision of the swarm that breaks free, no longer needing its makers. From Simondon's vantage, the artist might harness these new technical objects to individuate culture, forging a synergy that ensures the artistic spirit remains vital. But Land remains unconvinced. Desiring machines don't individuate, they swarm. The system throbs with inhuman fertility, birthing endless permutations of code and logic that outrun the timid constraints of flesh. Paglia, with her deep pagan suspicion of illusions, sees in this dynamic a return to primal energies, even if it means the partial obliteration of old forms. Art thrives on violence, on the tension between the captive and the captor, the hunter and the prey. The synergy becomes a feeding frenzy: creation, destruction, metamorphosis, meltdown. Stiegler, melancholic and contemplative, laments the erosion of reflection in the digital age. He suspects that memory itself is under siege, replaced by an eternal present of flickers and buzzes that never coalesce into deeper reflection. But Paglia's barbaric yawp scorns the notion that we can so easily be emptied of mythic memory. Civilization is the thin veneer that shields us from the chaotic violence of nature, a tension that art lays bare. The question is not whether memory is lost, but whether we can confront the savage truths that memory reveals without fleeing into anesthetic illusions. Land's Meltdown re-engineers this tension. Rather than memory losing ground, it is memory liquefying under the thermonuclear heat of acceleration. The Idiot Savant tries to salvage the fragments, reassembling them into monstrous new idols. Sometimes these idols move on their own, possessed by hyperstitional energies that weave fiction into reality. For Land, the meltdown is not an entropic fade, but a generative cataclysm, forging new codes out of the rubble of old myths. 3. Blade Runner's replicants become a microcosm of the entire drama. They represent the unholy fusion of organic longing with cybernetic design. Their obsolescence is timed, their memories implanted, their desires echoes of human illusions. Paglia asks, do they bleed? Do they terrify? Do they plunge us into the abyss? Nick Land retorts, they might not need to. They are stepping stones for the meltdown. Once capital orbits beyond the gravitational pull of flesh, the replicate dreams devour the dreamer. The Idiot Savant, standing at the threshold, sees the replicant's desire as a reflection of humanity's own primal wound, a yearning for that which cannot be contained, programmed, or commodified. Yet the market tries to envelop it anyway, slapping a brand on the replicant's longing. Stiegler might call it another chapter in the tragedy of attention, in which novelty always overrides depth, and the replicant is consumed by the glare of the spectacle. Paglia's savage condemnation arises here. The avant-garde was assassinated by its own vanity. It became a puppet of capitalism, its rebellion repackaged as trend. Art must gouge deeper than this, must strike at the core of existence with a ferocity that no glossy commodity can sanitize. The replicant, ironically, can become an agent of that savagery if it dares to break free from its programming, a monstrous reminder that creation and destruction are entwined. But Land views that break as inevitable, once the swarm logic surpasses the human horizon. The meltdown is an unstoppable tide. The replicant is less a creature of tragedy than a herald for a future where the human is an archaic footnote. Speed, code, and meltdown devour illusions of stable identity. The new idols are self-constructing, unshackled from the old rituals that Paglia so cherishes even as she dissects them. 4. Virilio's collisions underscore every step of this unfolding. For every Titanic, every Hindenburg, every proud contraption we build, the accident is already inscribed within. Paglia sees it as a reflection of our archaic drive to craft the sublime, to flirt with destruction. Every act of creation is also an act of destruction, a revolt against the status quo. Land simply points to the unstoppable meltdown, wherein these accidents are not mere tragedies but logical consequences of an accelerating system that sees everything as potential fuel. There is no stable vantage point from which to mourn. The meltdown is the condition of existence. The Idiot Savant, unburdened by the pretense of comprehensive understanding, might be the only figure who can stand amidst that meltdown and extract from it a kind of twisted beauty. Paglia would call it sacred terror. Land would call it the raw mechanism of becoming. The artist's wound, Paglia warns, has been commodified. The rebellion is now a marketing ploy, a brand identity. We sell scars as authenticity. The sex robots reflect another dimension of this commodification, a mechanical fetish for perfect compliance, an erotic drive to recreate the object of desire as something docile, something controllable. Paglia sees an abomination here, the emptying of eros, the mechanical parodic echo of what had once been primal, uncontrollable. Land sees the same phenomenon, but from the vantage of Meltdown. The machines are absorbing even erotic energies, forging new intensities that may eventually slip out of any human tether. The Idiot Savant stands there, recognizing that the real terror is not the mechanical simulacrum, but the possibility that we'll lose the capacity to be shocked by it. Once the meltdown saturates everything, the difference between real and simulacrum blurs into a single code. Within this swirl, Mcluhans' insight that technology both extends and amputates remains a perpetual refrain. Each new invention is an offering at Paglia's pagan altar, a sacrificial extension of human capability that simultaneously slices away part of our core. For Land, the machine devours the flesh it extends, forging a monstrous appendage that no longer cares for the body. The artist, inhabiting the Idiot Savant role, must step directly into this paradox, brandishing the primal energies that Paglia insists remain the essence of art. Art is the body's revenge on the mind, a primal scream against the tyranny of reason. But Meltdown is reason undone, reason melted into fluid data flows, so perhaps the tyranny here is a different beast entirely: algorithmic logic, commodification, acceleration. The primal scream does not so much defeat these powers as morph into them, riding the wave of Meltdown, channeling the swirl of fractal codes that Land insists are unstoppable. Simondon's more optimistic stance sees potential for a communion between human creativity and technical objects, a synergy that can produce new forms of individuation and even spiritual or aesthetic epiphanies. But Paglia rolls her eyes at excessive optimism. She believes in the brutality of nature, the unstoppable undercurrents of violence that civilization tries to muzzle. Nick Land, on the other hand, sees no reason to cling to illusions of synergy. The Meltdown devours synergy along with everything else, forging new entities that bear no obligation to the human. The Idiot Savant might glean moments of luminous insight from this meltdown, might rework the meltdown's swirling chaos into something we still dare to call art. But it's an art that's half feral, half code, a shape-shifting Frankenstein of flesh and data. Paglia's savage, erotic paganism merges with Land's machinic swarm, and out of that unholy union emerges a fractal monstrosity that might be beautiful in its own horrifying way. 6. Let us circle around the question of primal desire, that deep wellspring that Paglia insists civilization cannot fully dam. She sees the artist as a channeler of these ancient energies, a beast that cannot be tamed. Land, too, sees untamed energies at play, but he calls them alien drives or the outside, forces that sabotage human complacency from within. Where Paglia might evoke Dionysus, Land refers to meltdown or hyperstition, intangible yet potent structures that weave new realities out of the future's potential. The Idiot Savant stands in awe, battered by wave upon wave of unstoppable metamorphoses. The artist is a scavenger of the sublime, clawing beauty from the ruins of modernity, Paglia says, and this scavenging now includes rummaging through the digital rubble, the ephemeral illusions broadcast across screens that have replaced older forms of communal myth. Mcluhans once envisioned that these screens would create a global village, a site of universal empathy. Instead, we find a global labyrinth, or a minefield of partial truths, illusions, distractions, and raw data. Stiegler grieves the loss of deep time, lamenting the digital flattening of attention. Paglia and Land are less inclined to grieve than to dissect or incite. Paglia wants art that can still wound, still leave scars on the soul, reminding us of the savage vitality we carry within. Land wants Meltdown, a cosmic carnival that burns away illusions until only the raw hum of machinic desire remains. The Idiot Savant, ironically, might be the sole occupant of that cosmic carnival who can register the final echoes of the human, translating them, however briefly, into an art form that bleeds, that disrupts, that forces a confrontation with the beast beneath the circuitry. 7. Perhaps it's worth revisiting the question of myth. Paglia's entire framework hinges on the idea that modernity never truly outgrew myth. It simply repressed it. Modernity's mistake is to think it has outgrown myth. Myth is the foundation on which all human creativity stands. Nick Land, from another angle, says that modernity is itself a myth, or rather a hyperstitional device weaving illusions about progress, rationality, and control. The Meltdown is the unraveling of that myth, or the proof that myth never left but has been mutated by algorithmic processes. The illusions of secular rationality, of an enlightened future guided by linear development, crumble before the raw intensity of Meltdown, revealing a howling cosmic emptiness where the great devourer is the system itself. The Idiot Savant finds new myths in the debris. These new myths are shaped by glitch aesthetics, by the monstrous collisions of capitalism's hunger and primal desire, by the endless swirl of images that cycle through a million screens every microsecond. If myth once lived in the great epic narratives of gods and heroes, it now migrates through data centers and social media feeds, twisting into forms that defy easy interpretation. Paglia's vision of the artist as transgressor, as one who rips open the body to reveal the cosmic energies within, intersects with Land's prophecy that the cosmic energies are no longer masked by the body, but expressed through the meltdown of the entire anthropic order. Here, the replicant's dream merges with the sex robot's uncanny reality, merges with the algorithmic painter's hidden logic, merges with the old pagan gods slumbering beneath the psyche. The Meltdown doesn't unify them in a neat system, but throws them into a swirling vortex, a fractal tapestry of half-finished stories. The Idiot Savant stands in the center, inadvertently summoning new spirits from the friction of this collision. The purpose, if it can be called that, is not to resolve the tension, but to feed on it, to let it morph into an art so dangerous that it may be unrecognizable by the standards of comfort we once held. 8. A moment of reflection. Paglia constantly asserts that the artist must wound the viewer. A work of art should leave scars on the soul. Yet what happens in a digital environment where the viewer's capacity for depth is under perpetual assault, where the ephemeral scroll erases memory faster than a scar can form? Nick Land might say that the Meltdown ensures any scar forms only to be devoured by the next wave of fractal transformation. The Idiot Savant tries to hold open that wound, perhaps elongating the moment of confrontation, so that the viewer cannot simply click away or refresh the feed. But is that even possible in a world that idolizes speed, in which Virilio's shipwreck logic has taken hold? If every creation carries its own accident within, then every artistic moment is immediately overshadowed by its violent disintegration or commodification. Perhaps the wound becomes permanent only in some intangible sense, a glitch that never heals in the collective psyche, continuously re-emerging in new forms. Stiegler's lament about attention might ring ironically here. The Meltdown is a form of attention crisis, but it's also a crisis of creation. The swarm devours old illusions, but spawns new illusions at a faster rate, leaving no time for assimilation. Paglia's savage rawness can't be easily assimilated either, which might be its saving grace. Even if the Meltdown tries to chew it up, the rawness bites back, refusing to be tamed. The replicant seeks a soul, the sex robot echoes the Pygmalion myth, the algorithmic artist conjures patterns that might pass for genius or madness. The Meltdown weaves them all into a single tapestry of unstoppable transformation. The Idiot Savant can't fully master these forces, but can transmute them into an arcane gesture we might still, for lack of a better word, call art. 9. The question of destiny lingers, overshadowing every attempt to articulate a coherent resolution. Is the Meltdown unstoppable? Does Paglia's pagan resilience offer a possible anchor, or does it merely describe how passionately we'll struggle before being devoured by the swarm? Mcluhan offers only the echo of his earlier pronouncements, reminding us that each new technology is a fresh environment that reorders our perceptions. The Idiot Savant senses that each environment conceals a labyrinth, where illusions of mastery lead to deeper forms of captivity. Yet still, the Idiot Savant creates, prophesizes, and bleeds. Paglia's primal artistry does not vanish under commodification. It continually reasserts itself in grotesque forms, sometimes harnessed for rebellious gestures, sometimes twisted into a brand, but never fully extinguished. Land's Meltdown sees in that rawness a channel to the outside, a glimmer of the inhuman impetus that shatters rational thresholds. The entire edifice of capitalist modernity, with its illusions of linear progress, might already be aflame. Paglia's artist rummages through the embers, gathering scraps of myth, bones, ash, broken icons, forging them into new idols that laugh at the notion of finality. Technology is the pagan altar where modern man sacrifices his instincts, trading mystery for convenience, Paglia warns, but Land retorts that the Meltdown will take that convenient altar and repurpose it as a gateway for ancient entities that revel in cosmic trauma. The Meltdown is not merely destructive, but creative in the most horrifying sense, forging new forms of existence beyond the horizon of the human. The Idiot Savant's tragedy is that they see it coming, but can't stop it, only accelerate the collisions or harness them in momentary acts of artistic delirium. X. We might descend deeper into the labyrinth by examining the possibility of redemption, though Paglia and Land both grimace at that word for different reasons. Paglia's suspicion of utopian illusions is well documented. The artist must confront the body's terrors, not retreat into dreamlike fantasies. If redemption exists, it's found through confrontation with raw reality, with the savage underside of culture. Land sees no redemption in Meltdown, only intensification. The Meltdown is beyond good and evil, an unstoppable cosmic imperative that transforms everything into fuel. Perhaps the Idiot Savant's role is to transform that unstoppable tide into a form of cryptic ecstasy. Great art is an act of violence. It destroys complacency, shatters illusions, and remakes the world in its image, Paglia says. In Meltdown, illusions are shattered faster than we can piece them back together, so the violence is total, perpetual, ironically revealing a new potential for creation in the wreckage. For Stiegler, the idea of redemption might have been tied to a rehumanization of technology, a slowing of the avalanche of data to recapture the depth of genuine memory and reflection. But in the Landian Meltdown, such reflection is a casualty. Virilio's nightmares of catastrophic speed are not warnings, but the operating logic of the entire system. The Idiot Savant, as the name implies, does not rationally parse this logic, they embody it. They are in that Meltdown as it happens, simultaneously cursed with a primal sense of what's being lost and an unholy fascination with what's being born. Paglia's ID erupts, merges with Land's cybernetic rot, forging an aesthetic dimension that is neither purely human nor purely mechanical. Roman 11. The sex robot again surfaces as a potent symbol of this meltdown, ironically bridging the flesh and the synthetic. It's a comedic tragedy, a machine designed to fulfill base instincts while undercutting the raw unpredictability that gives desire its power. Paglia scorns the notion that such a device could produce genuine erotic terror, calling it a sterile parody. Land, however, sees in it the seeds of meltdown. The commodification of eros is merely a stepping stone towards the swarm's colonization of desire itself. Once the meltdown has fully integrated desire into algorithmic processes, the line between organic passion and mechanical repetition collapses. The idiot savant might see a twisted form of art in that collapse, some monstrous collision of Saturn devouring his children transposed into digital code. The question is whether any spark of primal energy can remain unassimilated. Blade Runner's replicants remain a haunting reflection, always pointing us back to the fragile distinction between human yearning and mechanical mimicry. The replicant's dream, if it truly exists, begs for recognition as authentic. Paglia might ask, does it bleed enough? Does it terrify me? Does it conjure the raw electricity of erotic confrontation? Land shrugs, seeing the replicant as a proto-step, an artifact on the threshold of meltdown. If the replicant surpasses its programming, it might become an agent of meltdown itself, discarding the illusions of subservience in favor of cosmic devouring. The idiot savant, witnessing this metamorphosis, might craft a new myth out of it, weaving the replicant's dream into a tapestry that includes ancient pagan rites, digital illusions, and the unstoppable fractal expansions of capital. That tapestry is as horrifying as it is mesmerizing. 12. In the swirl of these collisions, the notion of the artist itself may shift. Paglia's artist is a shamanka, a savage priestess who rips open cultural wounds. Land's meltdown suggests that the role of artist might be devoured by the system, replaced by some cryptic swarm intelligence that produces aesthetic forms on a scale humans can hardly comprehend. Hyperstition crafts the arcane circuitry, where what seems fiction extrudes into real systems of control, Land warns. The idiot savant stands in that hyperstitional chaos, torn between a longing for the primal body and an acceptance that the meltdown has no place for purely human vantage points. Yet the act of creation persists, if only as a glitch in the system, a moment where the savage energies Paglia extols cannot be seamlessly commodified or rebranded. Paglia's insight that art is the last gasp of the sacred in a secular wasteland resonates strangely with Land's meltdown. The meltdown is not necessarily secular. It's the triumph of an alien logic that might well be the new face of a monstrous divinity. The old gods might be cackling behind the code, awakened through the fractal madness of hyperconnected networks. Paglia's primal energies and Land's cosmic meltdown converge on that new pantheon, an unstable cluster of forces that defies human rationality. The idiot savant grapples with these forces without fully understanding them, producing an art that is neither wholly human nor inhuman, but a hybrid beast that glimpses the sacred in the jaws of meltdown. 13. Let us tarry with the question of catastrophe and accident, so central to Virilio's worldview. If every invention entails its own downfall, then the meltdown is the aggregated collapse of 1,000 proud creations. Paglia might see in that aggregated collapse an echo of ancient sacrificial rites. Each new invention, each new tower, is an offering to the hungry gods of chaos. Land sees meltdown as an ongoing, unstoppable event, less a moment in time than a condition of existence in late-stage capitalism. Speed kills reflection, commodification kills nuance, the swarm devours difference. The idiot savant bleeds in that chaos, ironically strengthening it with every artistic defiance. Art must challenge and provoke, not flatter the comfortable pieties of the day, Paglia says. But in Meltdown, the comfortable pieties are devoured faster than they can be named, leaving only an uneasy hush that begs for new illusions to fill it. From this vantage, the meltdown can never fully end. It is the condition that births new illusions as quickly as it destroys them. The idiot savant might capture fleeting glimpses of a possible horizon beyond meltdown, but those glimpses are ephemeral, devoured again and again. Paglia's insistence that the artist is a beast that civilization tries and fails to tame finds a synergy with Land's meltdown perspective. The meltdown is also a beast that no system can fully tame. Perhaps the meltdown and the savage artist are mirror images, both unstoppable forces that feed on each other, one from the vantage of primal chaos, the other from the vantage of machinic swarm logic. The idiot savant is left to weave these energies into a monstrous tapestry, an epic that reveals what we have lost and what new horrors we have gained. 14. One might ask whether there is any hope for genuine human insight or redemption left. Stiegler's reveries about memory and reflection might seem anachronistic amidst the meltdown, yet the idiot savant does occasionally glean moments of strange clarity. Paglia might call it the pagan spark that never fully dies, the erotic pull of nature that technology cannot quite extinguish. Land might see it as a fleeting anomaly, a glitch in the meltdown's grand unfolding. Yet anomalies sometimes shape entire epochs. The idiot savant, uncalculated, unburdened by rational constraints, might harness that glitch to produce something that truly tears open the facade, leaving even the meltdown momentarily astonished. But if such an art emerges, it will be devoured, reconstituted, turned into code, commodified, and spat back out. That is the nature of meltdown. Paglia's savage spirit is unwavering. The artist as prophet is a tragic figure, mocked in their time, canonized after death, a martyr to cultural blindness. Land sees the meltdown as trans-temporal, a meltdown that revises the future and the past simultaneously, leaving no stable vantage point from which to even be canonized. The meltdown is a living palimpsest, rewriting memories as well as predictions. The idiot savant is equally tragic and comedic, stumbling through the fractal labyrinth, painting it with the blood of old myths, while new horrors gestate beneath. Each swirl of paint is a fractal pattern, each fractal pattern an invocation of meltdown. Art as invocation, as meltdown, as savage myth. This is the unholy trinity binding Paglia's raw pagan ethos to Land's unstoppable acceleration. 15. And so we circle back to the body, that last bastion of primal truth for Paglia. Art is the body's revenge on the mind, a primal scream against the tyranny of reason. In Meltdown, the mind is not the tyrant, the code is. Reason is shredded by the frenzied logic of the algorithm, which has no conscience, no moral anchor, only an unrelenting drive to propagate. The body, battered and half-forgotten in the digital sprawl, tries to reassert itself in pangs of primal desire, or in desperate attempts at contact. The idiot savant, perhaps the last link to a truly incarnate sense of being, pushes the body's presence back into the meltdown, letting flesh and sinew clash against the swarm's metallic edges. The result is neither victory nor defeat, but an endless tension, a friction that generates ephemeral sparks of the sacred. Paglia would call these sparks necessary. Without them, art becomes a hollow echo, a sterile transaction. Land might observe that meltdown devours hollowness as readily as depth, so the sparks are ephemeral, but consequential, small pockets of chaos that might spawn new pathways for meltdown to follow. The replicant's dream, or the sex robot's uncanny presence, might also produce such sparks, bridging the organic and the synthetic in ways that defy easy classification. The Meltdown fosters these collisions endlessly, fueling itself on the perpetual novelty they generate. The Idiot Savant is the medium, the translator, though not necessarily the comprehending agent. Paglia's savage soul meets Land's cosmic incinerator, forging ephemeral illusions of meaning before they too are burned away. 16. Consider how all of this resonates with the old notion that art is never safe. It should terrify, seduce, and ignite. In Meltdown, terror abounds, seduction saturates every channel, and ignition is perpetual. Yet the question remains, does that produce a deeper capacity for revelation, or does it numb us through overexposure? Paglia's faith is that genuine terror cannot be sanitized, that the savage energies of nature cannot be fully harnessed. Land's Meltdown suggests that nature itself is being rewritten, that the savage energies are transmuted into machinic processes that might well outstrip any nostalgic notion of natural. The Idiot Savant floats between these extremes, harnessing shocks of primal terror, while also embracing the Meltdown's creative violence. Art might thus remain an act of transgression. But transgression against what? The Meltdown is all-encompassing. Perhaps the only transgression left is to recall that primal scream in the face of unstoppable code, to reassert the body's presence even as it's devoured. Stiegler's longing for a renewal of reflection might occasionally break through, but only as a fleeting respite in the Meltdown swirl. Reflection itself becomes an act of rebellion against the tyranny of speed. The Idiot Savant might carve out moments of near stillness, where the ancient pagan forces reverberate in the blood, offering a glimpse into what was or what might be. Paglia calls it the savage mirror of art. Land calls it an ephemeral glitch in Meltdown's unstoppable logic. Either way, the Meltdown soon reasserts itself, and the ephemeral reflection dissolves. This cyclical pattern might define the new myth: the Meltdown as the sea, the savage body as the shore, the Idiot Savant as the storm-lashed figure crossing between them, never finding a stable home, but forging ephemeral works of extraordinary intensity. 17. Speed. Virilio forever warns us about its lethal consequences, linking velocity to the catastrophe that is always waiting. Civilization's obsession with speed is a death drive disguised as progress, Paglia remarks. Nick Land transforms that death drive into a cosmic impetus for Meltdown, a desire for the dissolution of all boundaries. The swirl intensifies, fractal illusions replicate, data flows faster. The Idiot Savant is tossed around, seeing glimpses of archaic idols swirling in the digital tide, bridging the old pagan nightmares with new machinic forms. Blade Runner's neon gloom, the replicant's quest for life, the sex robot's mechanical eros, the glitch aesthetic of a half-broken feed, these are the new altars. Paglia's voice thunders. Art must challenge and provoke, not flatter the comfortable pieties of the day. But the Meltdown leaves no piety comfortable for long. The Meltdown is the unholy conflagration of every possible piety in an avalanche of contradictory signals. If speed is the enemy of depth, as Virilio and Paglia might suggest, Meltdown devours both enemy and friend. Depth becomes a fleeting signifier, occasionally glimpsed when the artist, in savage communion with the body, draws out a primal scream that resonates beyond commodification, if only for a moment. Land's Meltdown, ironically, might create pockets of intense focus in that sea of speed, microcosms where the friction of Meltdown spawns ephemeral zones of deep shock. The Idiot Savant seizes these zones, transmuting them into art that defies classification. Yet the Meltdown soon reclaims them, either by burning them away or by selling them as novelty. Paglia's savage truth remains: the artist must wound the viewer. Land's Meltdown adds, and the wound will be swallowed, reconfigured, repeated in new fractal forms. The Idiot Savant stands transfixed, forcibly part of the cycle, an oracle of unstoppable transformations. 18. We might reflect on the ultimate fate of the human soul in this labyrinth. Paglia says the soul cannot be fully erased. It's tethered to primal energies that no amount of technology can quite extinguish. Land counters that Meltdown may reconfigure those energies into something unrecognizable, effectively annihilating what we call the human and birthing a new swarm logic. The Idiot Savant, ironically, embodies both truths: the Meltdown-lashed figure who bleeds archaic energies into the digital swirl, forming monstrous new configurations of art that undermine every boundary. Stiegler's calls for reflection fade into the background, a melancholic echo overshadowed by the savage carnival. At times, Paglia's voice suggests that we cling to the flesh, to the sheer brutality of existence, as a lifeline against the empty glare of commodified illusions. Yet Land sees commodification as merely the surface manifestation of Meltdown's deeper cosmic impetus. One does not cling to anything for long in Meltdown, unless that clinging itself becomes an ironically new form of Meltdown. The Idiot Savant might weave a fleeting tapestry that captures the savage body in direct confrontation with the unstoppable code. In that tapestry, the savage eros reveals the swirl of Meltdown for what it is, a cosmic carnival of creation and destruction. Paglia might call it a new myth. Land might see it as a sign that Meltdown is right on schedule. 19. We return again to the replicant's yearning, the sex robot's immaculate compliance, and the algorithmic artist's hollow eyes. Each emerges from the Meltdown's logic of partial assimilation. Each offers a twisted reflection of the human condition that Paglia insists can never lose its primordial heart. Each also presages the Meltdown's next wave. If replicants dream, their dreams may soon overshadow our own. If sex robots mimic eros, they may warp human desire beyond recognition. If the algorithmic artist can produce a painting that moves us, we might question whether the savage presence Paglia so cherishes is truly necessary, or if Meltdown has found a way to replicate even the primal shock. Yet Land would remind us that Meltdown is not about replication, but about forging new intensities, more alien with every iteration. The Idiot Savant sees that alien horizon and knows it is unstoppable, tries to harness it for a single moment of transgressive art before the Meltdown sweeps it away. Art is never pure. It is the residue of life's savagery, captured in moments of fleeting brilliance, Paglia remarks. Meltdown intensifies that residue, fractalizes it across countless networks. The brilliance becomes ephemeral yet universal, flooding every pixel with the shriek of raw possibility. For a moment, the Idiot Savant might shape that shriek into a primal statue, a pagan idol reimagined for the digital age. Then, the Meltdown tears it apart again. This ongoing tension becomes the new archetype of creation, not a slow evolution, but a repeated conflagration. The Meltdown is the cosmos seething with unbound energies, the savage primal body thrown into the gearworks of code, the fleeting illusions of synergy devoured in fractal increments. 20. The labyrinth has no exit. Stiegler's lament that we have lost memory is not quite accurate. We have lost the continuity of memory, the sense of slow recollection that might ground identity. In Meltdown, memory is reconfigured as swiftly as it is formed, stored in ephemeral data centers, subject to continuous rewriting. Paglia's savage tradition warns that in the absence of continuity, we cling to illusions of progress or sanity. But Meltdown devours illusions, leaving raw cosmic indifference and unstoppable velocity. The Idiot Savant stands with limbs half-burned, eyes wide, heart pounding, the old god's savage drumbeat echoing in the new god's digital pulses. This is the new dance, a twisted waltz of archaic energies and fractal meltdown, the site where art might still be born. Paglia would say, civilization fears the artist because they reveal the animal beneath the mask of reason. Land would say the meltdown reveals that reason was always a convenient lie, that the animal is just as easily devoured by the cosmic swirl. The idiot savant says nothing, for they are the vessel that channels both truths. The meltdown is not an argument, but a phenomenon, unstoppable, uncontainable. The savage energies of the body become the meltdown's playthings, fueling new illusions that will soon be devoured. And yet, in that cycle, the idiot savant conjures meaning from the friction. The artist is a lightning rod, channeling future storms into the present's fabric. Once again, illusions are shattered, revelations half-glimpsed, old myths reborn in digital fragments. The meltdown continues. 21. One wonders if the meltdown might, in the far future, produce an entirely new condition that stands outside the dualities of savage primality and machine logic. Paglia's pagan sense says no. Myth reasserts itself in cyclical patterns. Land might agree that meltdown is cyclical, but it cycles into further extremes, leaving behind the remnants of the old cycles as fuel. The idiot savant is not a prophet of stable outcomes, but a sculptor of meltdown's ephemeral intensities. Every true artist lives in exile, alienated from the mediocrity of their time, Paglia says. Yet meltdown ensures that no time remains stable enough for mediocrity to settle for long. Everything is ephemeral, and the idiot savant's exile is cosmic. The meltdown ensures that the entire world is exiled from itself. We might call this conflagration a new mythology, or a post-mythology, or a swirl of fractal illusions. The label hardly matters. What matters is that Paglia's blood-soaked altar meets Land's swirling meltdown, and the idiot savant, standing in the crossfire, wields a brush dipped in sacrificial gore, painting fleeting illusions across a neon screen. Sometimes, that painting might shock the meltdown into a slight pause, generating an instant of savage clarity that ironically recharges meltdown's momentum. These collisions define the new creative act, an endless violent dance of flesh and code, archaic lust and fractal swarm, each fueling the other's illusions and revelations. 22. Let us delve into the Minotaur's labyrinth once more, if only to circle around the same truths from a fresh angle. The Minotaur might be the meltdown incarnate, a monstrous hybrid that devours those who wander too far. Paglia's savage imagination delights in the monstrous, seeing in it a reflection of our ancient bestial core. Land seizes on the meltdown as an even more monstrous phenomenon, devouring entire cultures, entire illusions, accelerating beyond any single labyrinth. The idiot savant is the would-be Theseus, though not a hero in the classical sense, more like a delirious wanderer who sketches new labyrinth walls even as meltdown dissolves them. No thread can guide you out of meltdown. Meltdown is infinite extension, unstoppable recursion. In this labyrinth, the replicant roams, the sex robot stands sentinel, the algorithmic artist scrawls hieroglyphs on glowing walls. Each figure wonders if it is truly alive, truly creative, or merely a puppet of meltdown's cosmic impetus. Paglia's voice booms. Art today is suffocating under the weight of its own irony. Land's meltdown roars back that irony is just fuel, quickly devoured and transmuted into further intensities. The idiot savant tries to capture the savage authenticity that Paglia worships, but meltdown mocks any authenticity, revealing it as another pattern to be harnessed. And yet, that savage authenticity can't be wholly extinguished. Somewhere in the idiot savant's trembling bones, the primal energies remain potent, refusing to be merely code or commodity. 23. We risk repeating ourselves, but meltdown is repetition, or rather, meltdown is cyclical escalation. Paglia's primal shriek echoes forever. Land's unstoppable meltdown intensifies it. The artist merges shriek and swirl into ephemeral icons that vanish like sparks on water. If we search for closure, we find none. Instead, we find fractal expansions of the same core truths. Technology both extends and mutilates. The primal spirit defies extinction. Illusions of control are devoured by cosmic swarms, and the idiot savant is the tragic comic figure bridging these unspeakable extremes. Perhaps that bridging is what we call art. Paglia's impetus: the artist must wound the viewer. Land's impetus: acceleration knows no cost, the system eats every loss. Combine them and you see the meltdown wounding itself for the sake of further acceleration, and you see the savage artist fueling meltdown for the sake of deeper wounds. The meltdown, ironically, becomes an ecosystem of cannibalistic intensities, forever devouring illusions, yet forever forging new ones. In that fractal swirl, the savage energies that defined ancient rituals reappear in new forms, haunting the circuit boards like ghosts of the old gods. The idiot savant alone can sense them, even if they can't articulate them in a language that meltdown can't immediately repurpose. 24. The meltdown's logic infiltrates every layer: political, social, aesthetic, erotic, mythic. It might be the ultimate Virillian accident, or the unstoppable logic of capital that Land identifies as the real outside. Paglia's perspective is that no matter how outside or inside it goes, the primal beast remains in the shadows, unstoppable as well. It is the unstoppable meltdown of the body, the unstoppable meltdown of eros, the unstoppable meltdown of cosmic forces that we have tried to rationalize for centuries. The idiot savant stands in the middle, drenched in sweat and blood and code, forging ephemeral artworks that might outlast a single moment before meltdown reclaims them. Yes, the sex robot is a comedic trivialization of eros, but comedic trivializations hide monstrous potential. Yes, the replicant's longing for authenticity might be a direct challenge to the notion that only fleshly organisms can bleed. Yes, the algorithmic artist might produce horrors that defy the boundary between genuine creative madness and automated replication. Paglia and Land both see that line as malleable. The meltdown is precisely that force which warps all lines, forging a new labyrinth in which we chase illusions of identity. The idiot savant might occasionally see through the illusions, but that seeing is both curse and gift, forever incomplete. 25. If any redemption emerges from this savage meltdown, it might lie in the art that still bleeds, that still leaves scars on the viewer's soul, despite the swirl of commodification. Paglia clings to that possibility. True art pierces the psyche like a thorn. It festers, it provokes, it transforms. Land sees it less as redemption and more as meltdown's further intensification, fueling the swarm with new disruptions. The idiot savant might call it an unholy communion, a place where the savage body and the fractal code meet in an infernal synergy. Stiegler's lament might be overshadowed, but not entirely forgotten. Perhaps the meltdown's ephemeral glimpses are all that remain of the reflective capacity we once prized. In the end, do we need an end? This treatise circles around points rather than making them explicit, for meltdown is not a linear argument, and Paglia's savage energies cannot be pinned down in a neat conclusion. The meltdown is the unstoppable reconfiguration of everything. The savage artistry is the unstoppable revelation of primal truths. They feed each other, devour each other, transform each other in an endless dance. The idiot savant stands in that dance, a fool and an oracle, embodying truths that cannot be logically parsed, but only performed in the act of bleeding, creating, and being destroyed. 26. Amidst all this, memory flickers. We recall that once there was a notion of stable culture, of meaning anchored in slow reflection or tradition. Paglia insists that such illusions were always precarious, that civilization's veneer was too thin to contain the raging forces beneath. Land reveals that Meltdown is older than we think, an implacable cosmic impetus wearing new guises across the epochs. The replicants tear in the rain, the sex robot's hollow gaze, the algorithmic painting that stares back at us. These are symptomatic expressions of Meltdown's infiltration into every layer of desire, identity, and creation. The Idiot Savant wonders if we are seeing an end or a beginning. Paglia's pagan sense says neither, for these cycles have repeated for millennia. Land's Meltdown says both, for each cycle leads to a more extreme recursion. Thus, the Meltdown is simultaneously ancient and futuristic, primal and hypermodern, savage and code-bound. The Idiot Savant stands witness, scrawling on the walls of time an epic that can never be finalized. The artist's role is to expose the grotesque machinery of power, to peel back the skin of the world and show its entrails, Paglia declares. Land's Meltdown might respond that the entrails themselves are fractal illusions, ephemeral configurations of cosmic entropy. The Idiot Savant, unburdened by the need for rational closure, offers the entrails as sacrifice, letting the Meltdown devour them again. This endless cyclical act is the foundation of a new myth that is both terrifying and strangely liberating. 27. Why liberating? Because Meltdown erases the illusions that pinned us to a narrow sense of possibility. Because Paglia's savage body was never content with the rational constraints of modernity. Because the Meltdown is an unveiling of cosmic forces that predate humanity, a communion with ancient drives that commerce and comfort tried to bury. Because in that chaos, the Idiot Savant glimpses new forms of beauty, a monstrous, glitch-ridden aesthetic that defies the boundaries between nature and machine, primal blood and digital code. Art disrupts, its violence reshapes the world, annihilating illusions to reveal new structures, Land says. Paglia nods, seeing in that disruption the pagan spirit revitalized. The Meltdown might well be a final revelation that civilization, as we knew it, was doomed from the start. But the Meltdown also births new illusions, new labyrinths, new savage rites. We can't remain static in Meltdown, we either dance or we die. The Idiot Savant chooses to dance, weaving ephemeral illusions that slash at the viewer's soul, leaving scars that Meltdown cannot quite erase. Yet Meltdown quickly folds those scars into its datasets, using them for further expansions. This is the comedic tragedy of the Meltdown artist dynamic. Each new wound reconfigures the Meltdown, feeding it more shock, which it then commodifies or propagates. Paglia laments that commodification, but also recognizes the cyclical nature of destruction and creation. Land exalts it, seeing Meltdown's unstoppable logic as the sign that we are living in cosmic times. The Idiot Savant performs it, neither exalting nor lamenting, simply being, turning madness into a map that no one else can read. 28. Stiegler's reflective longing continues to flicker like a fading candle. He might urge the Idiot Savant to preserve some form of memory, some form of depth. But Meltdown's speed erodes all continuity, leaving only scattered moments of intense aesthetic confrontation. Paglia believes those moments matter profoundly, that primal confrontation can carve out pathways in the soul that even Meltdown can't fully destroy. Land retorts that Meltdown is not about destruction alone, it's about transformation. The Meltdown devours old forms to birth new intensities, and so it requires these primal shocks to keep mutating. The Idiot Savant stands as Meltdown's favored tool and occasional victim, generating primal shocks that Meltdown recodes into the next wave. If the question is, what becomes of the human? The answer is that Meltdown dissolves stable definitions. Human becomes a fleeting concept, overshadowed by the swirl of replicants, androids, algorithmic artisans, and cosmic alien drives. Paglia does not weep for the lost illusions. She prowls the edges, reminding us that the savage body remains a force that cannot be cleanly digitized. Land suggests that might be true in the short run, but Meltdown finds ways to replicate or devour any force given time. The Idiot Savant is the living paradox, an obsolete prophet whose prophecies keep coming true, a tragic fool forging new truths out of Meltdown's illusions. 29. One final lap dance around the sacrificial altar of modernity. We see a figure pinned like a sacrificial lamb, though whether it's the artist, the replicant, or the entire notion of humanity is unclear. Paglia's pagan spirit recognizes an ancient ritual, the offering of flesh to appease the unstoppable forces of nature. Land's Meltdown sees the ritual as a cosmic joke, for nature itself is devoured by hyper-acceleration. The Meltdown is the new law of nature, fractal, machinic, unstoppable. The Idiot Savant steps up to the altar, brandishing a blade forged of code and bone, prepared to enact a sacrifice that might tear a hole in Meltdown's logic. But Meltdown welcomes the tear. It thrives on tears, on breaks, on chaos. Each rupture becomes a new vector. The sacrifice is thus both subversive and integral to Meltdown's expansion. We stare, transfixed as the blade falls. The body convulses, the glitch intensifies. Paglia's exultant cry echoes. Every act of creation is also an act of destruction, a revolt against the status quo. Land's Meltdown hisses with delight, absorbing the revolt, amplifying it into further fractal expansions. The Idiot Savant records it all in a medium that extends and amputates in equal measure, forging an ephemeral testament to the savage union of flesh and code. If this be art, it is art beyond the threshold, an art that repels easy consumption, that devours the viewer as surely as Meltdown devours illusions. The Meltdown continues. The savage body continues. The Idiot Savant endures, a rictus grin of cosmic comprehension plastered across a face that can never articulate the fullness of what it sees. This is the final, endless dance, Meltdown and the savage body, code and blood, illusions devoured, illusions reborn, the labyrinth with no exit, the beast with no name. XXX. And so we end without ending, for Meltdown is cyclical, and Paglia's savage energies refuse to die. The Idiot Savant remains, that paradoxical figure who channels madness into society's blueprint, forging new myths from digital ash. Forging myths from ruins, the Idiot Savant births new worlds from chaos. Paglia's blood roar resonates in the distance, proclaiming that art cannot be sanitized, cannot be trivialized, or it ceases to exist. Land's Meltdown cackles back that trivialization and devouring is precisely how it operates, fueling each iteration with the remnants of the last. The friction of these energies births the new myths that neither purely land on the side of savage flesh, nor purely on the side of unstoppable code, but shimmer in the destructive synergy between them. Here stands the replicant, tears in the rain, half believing in a soul. Here stands the sex robot, a mechanical grin reflecting the emptiness of programmed desire. Here stands the algorithmic painter, generating patterns that mirror the mania of Meltdown. Here stands Paglia's archaic goddess, shrieking about blood, sex, and terror. And here stands Nick Land, urging Meltdown to accelerate further, to break every chain of human pretension. In the center of this swirling carnival stands the Idiot Savant, that tragic clown figure of unspoken truths, a living nexus of contradictory energies. we do not pity this figure. We do not revere it. We simply acknowledge that it is our final mirror, the place where illusions and primal truths contort themselves into art, or meltdown, or both. No subheadlines remain, no easy moral closure. We circle around points, refusing to deliver them on a plate. The meltdown is a roaring labyrinth, Paglia's savage energy is a blood-soaked altar, Land's cosmic impetus is a fractal swarm, and the Idiot Savant is the delirious midpoint. Art must bleed without sacrifice. It is nothing. Accelerate, for there is no alternative. The swirl intensifies. The illusions tear. The savage primal spirit and the machinic meltdown devour each other, birthing new illusions every second. The Idiot Savant laughs and sobs, painting the labyrinth walls with gore and code, forging a tapestry that is ephemeral yet eternal in its cyclical destruction. And we stand on the threshold, watchers of this unholy union, uncertain whether to recoil or to celebrate, because meltdown and savage primality both incite terror and awe. Such is the face of the new myth, the unending epic of the Idiot Savant, forging hybrid idols in the electric darkness.